We attack a city, Mosul. We attack Mosul. I've been reading about the attack for 4 months. The reason they want to attack it, a primary reason, is to take the leaders of ISIS out because that's where they think they are. And I say, whatever happened to a surprise attack?
Well, that was Donald Trump earlier today addressing a difficult battle to take back Mosul from ISIS. And now the United Nations is, quote, gravely worried that ISIS militants are using civilians as human shields. And this unfolding, ISIS launching a surprise attack on Kirkuk. Joining me now to discuss it all, Jessie Jane Duff and Chris Harmer. Jessie Jane, let me start with you. Of course, this is highly advertised. Everyone knew it was happening. The irony, though, is that the battle has been tougher so far than anyone thought it would be.
Of course it's tougher because the simple fact is that we don't have U.S. forces that are actually conducting these battles. We have the Peshmerga forces that have not necessarily been armed as well as we should have had them armed, and we have Iraqi forces. And meanwhile, Americans are dying. We had a U.S. service member killed just yesterday, and one Wednesday we've had 3 U.S. service members killed in October alone fighting ISIS. The first one fighting for Mosul happened yesterday. So the reality is that Americans are dying in combat, and we don't necessarily have the gumption behind the force to destroy ISIS.
Was it a mistake? Was it a mistake to advertise this?
Of course it was. Of course it was. Because guess what ISIS is doing now? They're doing what's called pop-up attacks. They're in Kirkuk now, popping up and destroying that city. They're smart. They're going to be very liquid, and they're going to stay mobile. So Mosul is one area. Then they moved all of these families in. So now they're using human shields.
Chris, I think the Kirkuk thing surprised a lot of people. I mean, you understand the nature and art of war, if you will. Was advertising this to the degree that we did, perhaps even for political gain in this country, was that a big mistake? And did that add to the element? Did that give ISIS the ability to plan these counterattacks?
I wouldn't say it's a big mistake. I would say that it just didn't do anything positive for us. I mean, not everything is a huge mistake or a benefit. There's 2 maxims of military planning that always hold true. The first is no plan survives initial contact with the enemy, and number 2, the enemy gets a vote. So whatever the plan was for the liberation of Mosul from ISIS, clearly it's not going according to schedule. And ISIS has voted. They said, okay, if you want to attack us in Mosul, where we can't maybe stand and fight to the way we want, we'll attack someplace else in Kirkuk. I think this is a preview of what's going to happen after ISIS collapses as a governing entity. They're going to revert back to a terrorist organization that chooses where and when they strike. So right now, I think that the liberation of Mosul is inevitable. Right. It might take a week, a month, or a year. At some point, ISIS as a governing entity is going to collapse, and they'll revert back to terrorist organization.
Well, what about reverting back to one of the original issues here? I mean, the big issue since the death of Muhammad, Shia versus Sunni. And there's talk about, Chris, the Shiites having their flags flying high, intimidating Sunnis, and it's only a matter of time before they're at one another, and you know, you have this civil engagement that tears the country apart again.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in the short term, nobody would argue the proposition that defeating ISIS in Mosul is a good thing. That's absolutely clear. We all want ISIS to get kicked out of Mosul. The problem is what happens next day. Turks don't want the Peshmerga to advance. The Shiite militia don't want the Sunnis to advance. None of those players want the Iraqi government to advance. So you've got 5 separate organizations, all who are going to be trying to claim legitimacy or influence over Mosul. Now, it's a good thing that ISIS is gone. The only outcome there that benefits us is if the Iraqi security forces loyal to the government in Baghdad are the primary force. We'll see if it works out that way.
We'll see. It hasn't in the past. Guys, I want to quickly change the topic to this cybersecurity. FBI investigating today's massive denial service cyber attacks, knocked out service. There are a lot of popular websites. We're talking PayPal, Twitter, Netflix, some of the big ones. Mm-hmm. How vulnerable, Jessie, are we? And by the way, who did this?
You know, it's going the Democratic Party wants us to believe that it's the Russians, of course. But what Julian Assange has sent out a message that this was in defense of him. The reality is we don't know. So
these were rogue actors around the world acting on behalf of Julian Assange and pay like a camaraderie.
I think what's really happening is they're showing that they have control of whatever they want. So if you're on email and you're sending out classified information, it's going to be very vulnerable. And they're making a very clear statement with this, that no matter where you go, they can find what you're doing. And I don't think that anybody can say, well, we were robbed or they hacked into us. The reality is this is the world as we know it now in 2016. Hackers are there and they're going to get your stuff.
Chris, ultimately, I think it will be about cyber warfare. But today, it seems the ease in what they can do this it's scary.
Yeah, it's very difficult. You look back, my standard for surprise attacks is Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was the culmination of 20 years of Japanese industrialization. Today, you can take a terrorist, train him in a relatively short period of time. If he's computer literate, if he's got a high-speed computer and bandwidth, he can launch a cyber terror attack. It's something that the future of our country has to very much be interested in this, very much focused on this.
Right.
We are working on it, but we are still vulnerable.
All right, guys, thank you both very, very much. Thank you at home. Have a great weekend. In the meantime, here's Lou Dobbs. Keep it right here on Fox Business.